Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Tessa and I share videos on lifestyle, motherhood, and faith. Today I'm super excited to be talking to you guys about my first birth story, so with my son Hugo. It's honestly such a good story. When I look back, I can't believe it's been almost 2.5 years now. It feels like it just happened yesterday. When you're a mom, time just flies. Like, if you know, you know. So without further ado, I'm going to start telling this birth story. So flashback, May 2021. I was 38 weeks pregnant at that point, and I was going for my appointment to see my OBGYN just to see how dilated I was, just like the typical checkup that you have at 38 weeks, I would say. So at that point, I was feeling a lot of symptoms. I was talking to her about them. She was asking me, like, how are you feeling this week? And I remember feeling really tired. A lot of first trimester symptoms were creeping back up. So I was feeling a little bit nauseous. I remember feeling weird cramping, also like contractions, obviously not frequent. It just wasn't very intense, and it was randomly. It was when I was very active throughout the day that I would feel the most contractions. They call those Braxton Hicks contractions, where your stomach really tightens up, your uterus tightens up to prepare for labor. So I was feeling a lot of that at that point, and I was still keeping very active. It was May, so beautiful weather was coming, was here because summer was coming. I was walking my dog a lot. I was doing my workouts. I was making sure to keep really active, and on top of that, I was prepping for a natural birth. So I had it in my mind that I wanted to have this baby naturally with no epidural, which for a lot of people that I spoke to, like friends and family, they thought I was actually insane for wanting to do that. But I knew my grandmother had all her babies natural, except for her twins. That was done at the hospital, and I think she got the epidural for that. I know for a fact, though, that she had over 4 kids naturally with no epidural and at home. So I knew I really wanted to take that route. I knew it was going to be hard, but I mentally prepared myself for a natural birth. Also, I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I hate needles. I've always hated needles, which is hilarious because I wanted to become a nurse when I was younger, and I actually went to university in nursing, and I was giving needles to patients. But I personally hate needles, especially one that's going to be injected in my back. No thanks. Like a huge one, no thanks. Anyways, some people don't care because the pain of birth is 10 times worse than the epidural. But personally, I was more scared of the needle than pushing out a human. So yeah. Anyways, I was mentally preparing myself for that. My OBGYN did know that I wanted to take the natural path. So after she heard all my symptoms, OBGYN was like, okay, let me check. We'll see your progress, and we'll see if I can give you a sweep today. I was 2 centimeters dilated, 70% effaced. I knew that meant nothing. I know a lot of women that just stay super dilated for a week and they still don't give birth for a week. It doesn't really mean anything, but she was comfortable giving me a membrane sweep. So that's what she does. I cramped a lot throughout the sweep. It was a minute long, and it was not comfortable. It was really painful. So I leave the appointment, and she tells me to just keep an eye out for a lot of symptoms that could happen due to that sweep, which is spotting and whatnot. So right away I had to put a pad because I was spotting a lot, and I was feeling a lot of not contractions, but cramping in my uterus, low back cramping for hours and hours long. I get to 7 p.m. and then I lose my mucus plug, a little bit of it with blood. So it could have been a bloody show. I'm not too sure. Or it could have been just irritation, which is super normal when you get a membrane sweep. And I wake up the next day, nothing happened. I didn't go in labor, nothing happened. I felt perfectly fine the next day. I slept very well that night, actually. So the 23rd, which was Sunday, is when it started getting more intense. My symptoms were getting more intense. I was spotting again. More mucus plug coming out, more frequent Braxton Hicks contractions. I was thinking, okay, maybe it's coming soon, but I think I was just my body was preparing for labor. And then nothing really on Monday. And then the Tuesday night, I go to bed at 9 p.m. because the whole day, I kid you not, I was completely nesting. I was prepping a bunch of food for at the hospital because back then there was a lot of COVID restrictions. So I wasn't able to order food after I give birth. So I like made sure to bring food with me in the hospital room, especially for Alex, who was gonna be like starving because he has such a big appetite and we're not allowed to order food from outside the hospital. And sometimes the hospital food is not the best. So I really wanted to make sure that we were both well fed while we were in there, because we weren't allowed to leave the room as well for our stay at the hospital. I prepared like zucchini cake and like a quinoa salad, a pasta salad, sandwiches. Like I went pretty much all out and I had so much energy. I didn't know where this like burst of energy was coming from, but I had it all right. And then I went for a walk. I went on a hike with my dog. I had a workout. I showered, did my hair. Like when I tell you I did a lot of things on Tuesday, I mean, I did a lot of things on Tuesday and I was not even tired until night came around. It was still a bit light outside when I went to bed. So it was probably 8ish or something. And then I wake up at 11:30 and I have huge cramps. And this was very different than my previous cramping. It was more intense and it was a lot in my back and it was more painful and I had to like breathe through them. So I said, okay, I'm gonna start timing these. My husband was still sleeping. I really wanted him to be as rested as possible. So I take my phone, I quickly download a contraction timer app, and they were all like 3 minutes apart, 4 minutes apart. And they lasted about a minute long. And all I wanted to do was be on my hands and knees, because even standing was painful. I found it was a lot of pressure in my lower back that I was feeling. And I just really wanted to be on all fours. That's all I wanted to do. I went to the washroom and that really put a lot of pressure down there, which made it everything really intense and worse. So I avoided going to the washroom as much as possible. So an hour goes by, I'm laboring on my own. Alex is sleeping, my dog is sleeping. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is getting intense. And this has been like, if you guys know the rule, if you have contractions every 5 minutes lasting a minute long for an hour, so it's 5-1-1. So I was tracking for that specific reason. And right away, my phone kept saying, go to the hospital, go to the hospital. Every second contraction I got, that like my phone was notifying me to go to the hospital. And I had just started labor. So I was like, okay, you need to chill. I'm not just gonna pack up and go and then this is false labor. So I waited like an hour and a half because I just couldn't believe it that I would have to go to the hospital like right away. So I wake up my husband right here in this bed. I wake him up, I tell him, okay, Alex, we need to go to the hospital. Like this is real. Like I've been laboring for an hour. Alex is like literally half asleep. He doesn't even want to move. He's not even excited, like no reaction. He's like, what? I'm like, yo, like get up. We need to go to the hospital. Like I'm literally in labor. And he just couldn't believe me, or he didn't want to believe me, because at that point it was like 12:45 or something. And he was so tired. But yeah, I had to like drag him out of bed. And then I call my mom, I tell her what's going on, and I ask her to come pick up Stella, because our dog would like freak out if we just left in the middle of the night and she was like here alone. So I made sure that my parents came to pick her up for her to go sleep at their place. I'm telling you, my dog, before we had kids, was treated like a queen. She still is. Don't get me wrong. Anyways, my parents come pick her up. We take the hospital bag. We pack up the cooler with all the food that I prepped that day, and we go to the hospital. It was so intense. Like the whole car ride on our way to the hospital, I was on my all fours because I could not sit down. I could not sit down. I think I had like 3 contractions on our way to the hospital, which was like a 10-minute drive because there was like not a soul on the highway. It was 1 a.m. So not a lot of people on the roads. And I was on my all fours. I could not move. Like it was so painful. When I get to the hospital, I could only go to triage alone because my husband wasn't allowed to go because of the COVID restrictions. And I got there and I had to walk alone all the way upstairs by myself. I went on the elevator. I remember that. But oh my God, that was like the worst walk of my life. And it takes forever because there's like no staff in the middle of the night, I guess, COVID times, I don't know. It took them forever to check me. They finally checked me and I was 4.5 centimeters. So I was able to stay in the hospital. I was so glad about that I didn't have to go back home. Next thing you know, I'm like crawling. Like this is when it becomes a blur because all my contractions were in my back. Like I was crawling everywhere. I could not stand up. I could not stand up. I was just crawling like in the hallways. And I finally get to my room after the triage and my husband meets me there because now that I was admitted, he was able to come in and be like my support person. And at that point, I'm asking the nurse, I'm like, maybe I could try taking a bath. Will that help? She wanted to know if I wanted the epidural soon. And I told her like, no, I can't take the epidural. Like I want to do this naturally. She leaves for a little while. And while she's gone, I'm just breathing through every contraction. The pain was so intense. I had never felt something like that in my life, obviously. If you've labored naturally for a long amount of time, you know how intense the pain is, especially back labor. Like there was no frontal contractions whatsoever. It was all in my lower back. Oh, it was so painful. Like looking back, I don't know how I did it. Once the bath is ready, I squat in the bath and all I feel is like a pluck. My stomach just like pops and a gush comes out and I'm like, oof, that was definitely my water breaking. I sit in the bath a little bit, but then the nurse is like, no, you can't, sorry, because your water's just broke. Like you can't due to infection reasons or something. So I don't question her at this point. I'm like, you know what? I'm in pain anyways. I'm not even enjoying this bath. I'm just gonna get out and we're gonna go on the bed and try that. So I go on the hospital bed on all fours again. At this point, it's 4 a.m. and she checks me. I remember being in pain when she checked me because I had to go on like my side. I wasn't even able to lay on my back. And she's like, oh my God, you're already like 9 centimeters dilated, almost 10. I can't believe you dilated that quickly because when they checked me at 2 a.m., I was 4.5 centimeters. And then she checks me around like 3:30, 4 a.m. and I'm like almost ready to push. Because I could feel how painful it was. Like that's probably why I was in so much pain, because of how quickly my body was dilating and because of all the back labor. Like I was just pushing through it when I tell you. Like, and Alex was almost every contraction was putting pressure on my lower back like this, like all his weight with like his palms. So I finally get to a point where I'm in a like chill state and I'm like, what is this? I could sleep. The nurse is telling me I need to check you again. Like just, I want to make sure. And I'm like, no, I cannot go back to my back. I cannot go back to I just need this break right now. So I close my eyes and I'm like wondering, okay, is labor stalling? Like what's happening? Like why am I all of a sudden not feeling any more contraction? Well, I'm pretty sure that was my body like giving me a break for the hardest part, which was the pushing baby out of my vagina part, the like ring of fire. So I had a good like 15-minute break, which was like amazing, but I could literally fall asleep. I'm pretty sure I dozed off for like a minute or two. I finally start feeling contractions again and I'm like, oh, this is different. Like this is a different type of contraction. This is even lower and I feel like I have to take a giant poop. So it was really intense. I started breathing through it. I started pushing. It took me about like, I would say 30 minutes to an hour to push baby out. And it was finally when the doctor came in and she told me to go on my side with like one leg up. I was like one leg up like this on my side. And then she's like, okay, I need you to give like a big push, give a big final push and breathe through at the same time. So that's exactly what I did. And then all of a sudden, baby like flies out. It wasn't like a slow like coming out of the birth canal. It was like a shooting for the stars. Like I was shocked on how quickly that went. And I screamed for my life. I was telling the doctor to stop, as if she had any control on what my body was doing. I literally yelled to her like, stop it, like a psychopath. And my husband was like, what is going on? But in the moment, I was in so much pain. That was like the hardest thing I ever did. The back labor was so intense. At least it was quick, like, you know, 11:30 to 5:30 a.m. He was born at 5:37 in the morning. I finally get to hold him in my arms. I could not believe it. I just pushed this baby out of me. It was a really special moment. But then there was complications that arose because my placenta was not coming out. So then the doctor was giving me this, they call it a massage, but it's really invasive in my opinion. They were pushing on my uterus, on my stomach, and it was causing me to bleed a lot. All that pushing was causing me to bleed a lot, and they were trying to detach the placenta from my uterus wall, and it just was not detaching. So they also gave me like a shot of Pitocin in my thigh. I don't really remember that because everything at that point became a huge blur. I was feeling super dizzy and nauseous. I even had to tell the doctors and the nurse to take my baby because I wasn't feeling well. All my vital signs weren't looking well. I remember a bunch of doctors just rushing through the delivery room. I was very out of it. I was feeling cold and I was shivering, and they even had to like put my bed, they had to lower my bed for all the blood to come back to my head. My husband was in the corner of the room with my baby and a nurse. My baby was perfect. Thank goodness for his health. He was doing great. But on the other hand, I was not. I was losing a lot of blood quickly. And my uterus was like, I guess it was shrinking, like it was getting smaller, and my placenta was still very well attached to the wall. And I did a lot of research on this after the fact. And I'm pretty sure because I was contracting so quickly and I literally gave birth within like 6 hours from start to finish, it didn't provide my placenta enough time to detach. That could have been a reason. There's a lot of different causes that can delay the placenta from detaching from the uterus. So I'm not exactly sure why, but that is one of the reasons. So they literally wheel me into emergency surgery, next thing you know, and I get put down and I'm extremely cold. I even saw in one of those corner mirrors of the hospital, like when they wheeled me to the operating room, I saw a reflection of myself and I was white as a ghost, which was so scary to see. I just had to shut my eyes for the rest of the time that they wheeled me. Finally, I get put down. I wake up and everything went well with the surgery. I did lose a lot of blood. So I had lost half of my body blood. That was really hard to recover from. I was so low energy for a few weeks postpartum. That was the hardest part of the recovery, was all the blood loss. I had 2 blood transfusions while I was at the hospital and an iron transfusion. I had to stay for 2 nights extra. The baby was fine, like Hugo was doing great. It was for me. So I wasn't able to walk for like 2 days after that. And yeah, they successfully removed all my placenta out. And that was like the traumatic part, I would say, about my birth story. But like everything else was so good. Like everything else of my first birth was amazing. All in all, I had a really good experience with like birthing my son. Other than it being very painful, it was so worth it. And I was glad that I didn't actually have to get the epidural. That feeling you get after you birth your baby is just, I cannot describe it. It was amazing. So yeah, that about sums up my birth story with Hugo. I learned a lot about my first hospital birth, a lot. And that's why I don't really regret anything that went down at the same time. I did a lot of research afterwards and I really prepped for my second birth, more for the postpartum time as well. Things like the placenta issue, I didn't even know that could be an issue really. I hadn't done lots of research on that. And because it happened to me the first time around, I knew what to look for the second time around. Even though it's really out of your control, there are a few things that you can do to help a retained placenta. So I can actually do a video on that. That's it, guys. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to be posting another video of the birth story of my second born, Joel. His birth story is completely different. It's a home birth. Yes, it was done naturally, but like no interventions whatsoever. Completely natural, no Pitocin. I didn't even know how dilated I was going into labor. So it's completely different experience, literally at home in this bed right here. Like such a different experience, and I much preferred my home birth versus my hospital birth. So I'm super excited to share that story with you guys. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna be releasing a lot more videos in the future regarding motherhood and birth. I'm very excited to share all that information with you guys, and I will see you very soon. Be blessed.